You can wipe the floor with your money, but you can't use it to wash your conscience.
At 4:12 a.m., the city belonged to the forgotten. Streetlights buzzed over cracked pavement, trash skittered in the wind, and the only sound was the slow scrape of a broom. Naomi Brooks, 43, widow, mother by choice, pushed her rusted cart through the rain. Her orange janitor's uniform clung to her skin, but her back stayed straight. Behind her came 4 small shadows, 4 girls, all 11, all hers. Lila, the quiet dreamer with a pencil always behind her ear. Tess, sharp and restless. Grace, silent but seeing everything. June, laughing at ghosts only she could hear. Together, they swept the streets that others pretended not to see. Naomi called it earning daylight. The girls called it home. They lived on little, preyed on less, until the day a man in a black car stopped beside her route. Damian Cross. Billionaire, real estate king. Smile like steel. "I have a job for you," he said. She nodded. Everyone does. But this job wasn't about cleaning streets. It was about cleaning conscience. His, not hers. Where are you listening from tonight? And what would you sacrifice for a better life? Your roof or your soul? By sunrise, the city's rhythm changed. Horns, footsteps, vendors calling out prices like prayers. Naomi Brooks leaned on her broom, wiping sweat from her brow, watching people rush past her without seeing her. That was the thing about being invisible. It made you stronger if you let it. Her work shift ended at 7. She and the girls ate breakfast on the steps behind an old library. Oatmeal in paper cups, laughter in place of luxury. The youngest, June, giggled between spoonfuls. "Mama, are we famous yet?" Naomi smiled. "Not yet, baby. Famous people get their pictures taken. We just leave footprints." Each girl carried a scar the world couldn't see. Lila still dreamed of drawing, using broken crayons she found in dumpsters. Tess once stole food before Naomi caught her, hugged her instead of scolding. Grace hadn't spoken since the night her shelter burned down. And June. June kept everyone laughing, as if joy was a weapon she refused to put down. Naomi wasn't their mother by blood, but love doesn't check paperwork. After breakfast, they headed to school. 4 uniforms, mismatched shoes, 1 backpack each. Naomi watched until they turned the corner, then headed to her second job, cleaning offices for Cross Holdings, the largest property firm in the city. The elevator mirrored her reflection back. Tired eyes. Steady heart. She entered quietly, began her work, polishing glass, emptying bins full of things people threw away but didn't need to. That's when she saw him. Damian Cross. Tall, precise, every gesture sharpened by success. His suit cost more than she'd earned in a month. He didn't notice her at first, not until his phone slipped from his hand and landed near her broom. She bent to pick it up. Their eyes met for the briefest second. Something flickered there, familiarity maybe, or discomfort. But he covered it fast. "You're the janitor?" "Yes, sir." "Work clean, be invisible, and don't talk to my staff," he said, not unkindly, just efficient. Naomi's mouth curved slightly. "Don't worry, I'm used to being unseen." That night, when she came home, the girls were waiting with candles on the table, 4 tiny flames dancing against the dark. June jumped up. "We saved you dinner." Naomi kissed her forehead. "Then I'm the richest woman in town." The meal was rice, beans, and laughter. Tess asked, "Mama, what's it like up there, in those tall buildings you clean?" Naomi thought for a long moment. "Cold," she said. "Clean, but cold. Like they washed the heart right out of the walls." The girls laughed, but she didn't, because she knew she'd seen that kind of emptiness before, in her students' eyes, when the school board cut their funding, in her husband's face the night before the accident, and now, in Damian Cross. As the girls drifted to sleep, Naomi sat by the window, watching the city lights. Somewhere beyond them, people were building towers higher than the clouds, while she and her daughters built something quieter, sturdier. Hope. And though she didn't know it yet, those two worlds were about to collide. And the test wouldn't be about dirt or money. It would be about what can't be cleaned. Rain returned the next morning, that fine mist that hides the city's shame instead of washing it away. Naomi pushed her cart down Cross Street, humming softly, her boots sloshing through puddles. She stopped at the same corner every day, where the skyline cut the clouds like glass. There, she always looked up, at the tallest building in the district. Cross Holdings Tower. It wasn't just a job site, it was a reminder. 5 years ago, her husband, Marcus Brooks, had been part of the night crew welding the tower's upper frame. The company rushed construction, skipped safety checks to meet deadlines. The scaffolding failed. 4 men fell. Only one name made the headlines: Damian Cross, the visionary who built the sky. Not the men who bled to make it stand. Marcus's death didn't earn a footnote. Naomi lost her home, her teaching job, her savings, all gone to hospital bills and lawsuits she couldn't afford to fight. Now, she swept outside the same tower her husband had died building. Inside, Damian Cross was fighting his own ghosts, though his looked more like numbers on a screen. The city council wanted his next project approved. The Renewal District, a luxury redevelopment that would erase the last slum in East Haven. It'll transform the city, his investors said. A new skyline, a clean slate. That phrase stuck with him. Clean slate. That afternoon, when he passed through the lobby, he noticed Naomi again, mopping the floor near the revolving doors. For a moment, he watched her work, precise, quiet, almost reverent. Something about her posture nagged at him, the way she hummed softly while she moved, a melody he hadn't heard in decades. "Excuse me," he said suddenly. She looked up. "Sir?" He frowned. "That tune, what is it?" She smiled faintly. "It's called A Little Light. Used to sing it to my students when they forgot their worth." "Students? I used to teach," she said, straightening. "A long time ago." He tilted his head. "Where?" "East Haven Public School." The name hit him like static. For a second, he couldn't breathe. He remembered a classroom, a younger version of himself. Angry, poor, humiliated. A teacher who refused to give up on him. Her name? Brooks. Mrs. Brooks. But before he could ask, his assistant interrupted. "Mr. Cross, your meeting's ready." He turned away, but the tune stayed. That night, Naomi tucked her daughters into bed in the narrow apartment above a grocery store. Rain tapped on the window pane. The girls had homework spread across the table, half-finished drawings taped to the wall. She traced one of them, a child's sketch of 5 stick figures holding brooms like flags, smiling under a banner that read, "Team Clean." She whispered, "One day, my loves, we'll sweep the world clean of sorrow." She didn't hear the knock at first. When she opened the door, she found Damian Cross standing in the hall, raincoat dripping. His presence filled the narrow space like another storm. "Mr. Cross," she said, startled. "I shouldn't be here," he began. "But I had to ask, were you ever a teacher?" She nodded slowly. "Why?" He took a breath. "You taught me." Her hand went still on the doorknob. "Damian." "Cross?" He nodded, eyes distant. "You used to make us write essays about redemption. I failed everyone." She smiled softly. "I remember. You always wrote about money, like it was salvation." Silence stretched between them, not awkward, but heavy with recognition. "I owe you more than I ever said," he murmured. "You saw something in me before I did." "And what do you see now?" she asked gently. He hesitated. A man who's forgotten what you taught him. He told her then about his new project, about the promise to clean up East Haven. When he finished, she just looked at him, eyes filled with both pity and fire. "You think you're saving the city," she said, "but you're just sweeping people under the rug." He swallowed. "You don't understand. It's progress." "No," she said, voice steady. "It's pride wearing a clean suit." He looked away. "You don't know what it's like to build something from nothing." "I built 4 lives from nothing," she said quietly. "And I never had to destroy anyone to do it." Her words hit him harder than any headline. He couldn't answer. She softened. "I know why you came tonight. You want me to take the job, to help you make it look good, to polish the guilt off your empire." He met her eyes. "Would you do it?" She paused, thinking of the girls asleep in the next room, the bills piled on the counter, the eviction notice waiting in tomorrow's mail. "I'll think about it," she whispered. When he left, the hallway felt emptier than before. She leaned against the door, breathing hard. Behind her, Grace stirred in her sleep, murmuring, "Mama, don't let the light go out." Naomi knelt beside her daughter, smoothing her hair. "Never," she whispered. "Not while we still have hands to hold the broom." Outside, thunder rolled over the city, and far away, in his penthouse, Damian Cross stood at his window, wondering for the first time if he'd spent his life cleaning the wrong kind of dirt. 2 weeks later, the city smelled like summer and smoke, the kind of heat that makes tempers rise and truths harder to hide. Naomi Brooks stood outside the Cross Holdings headquarters, wearing the same orange janitor's uniform, the same tired boots. But this time, she wasn't sweeping trash. She was waiting for a meeting. Damian had offered her the job again, this time formally on paper. Community cleanup supervisor, it said. The contract came with health insurance, a salary high enough to feed her girls for years, and one unspoken condition. The slum had to go. She'd read it 3 times before calling him. "You want me to erase the place where I found my children," she said flatly. He'd paused. "I want you to help me rebuild it. After you destroy it. It's just business, Naomi." "And business," she replied, "is just a prettier word for forgetting." Still, she came, because she needed to look him in the eye before deciding which version of herself to betray, the mother or the teacher. The elevator doors opened onto the top floor. Glass walls, skyline views, the hum of power. Damian was waiting, hands in pockets, eyes unreadable. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I didn't come for you," she said. "I came for the truth." He motioned toward the window. "Look out there. See that district? I can turn it into something beautiful. Clean streets, safe homes, schools. That's progress." Naomi's voice was soft but sharp. "That's a graveyard with better lighting." He sighed, pacing. "You think too small, Naomi." She met his gaze. "And you think too clean." Their argument went nowhere. When she left his office, his assistant, a young woman in designer heels, whispered to a colleague, loud enough for Naomi to hear, "Can you believe she brought up morality in a boardroom?" The laughter followed her all the way to the elevator. That night, a press release hit the news. Citywide cleanup initiative, backed by Cross Holdings. Community representative, Naomi Brooks. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Reporters, friends, old co-workers. The slum residents were furious. "You sold us out," someone yelled when she came by the next morning. "You took his money!" Naomi held up her hands, voice shaking. "I didn't sign anything." But no one believed her. At home, the girls watched from the window as protesters gathered outside their building, shouting her name. Tess turned to her. "Mama, what's happening?" Naomi forced a smile. "Adults making noise, baby. It'll pass. But it didn't. By the weekend, Cross Holdings announced her termination. For unprofessional conduct, the statement said. Her landlord, frightened by the media attention, evicted her by dawn. She sat on the curb that night, her daughters asleep beside her. The city moving around them like a machine that didn't notice what it crushed. She whispered, "I tried, Marcus. I really did." The rain came again, steady, merciless. Across town, Damian Cross stood before a boardroom of men in suits, the image of Naomi on the news behind him. A reporter asked, "Is it true she accused you of exploiting low-income neighborhoods?" He gave the answer his investors wanted. It's unfortunate when emotion clouds reason. The cameras loved it. The stock rose. The applause in the room felt hollow. That night, he found himself alone in the penthouse again. But this time, silence didn't sound like peace. It sounded like guilt. He poured himself a drink, turned on the TV, and froze. The screen showed Naomi, drenched, holding a broom like a staff, surrounded by the very people who'd condemned her days ago. She wasn't fighting them. She was cleaning the street outside their homes. A reporter off camera asked, "Why keep sweeping when they all turned on you?" Naomi's voice cracked but didn't break. Because dignity doesn't belong to the rich, it belongs to the clean-hearted. The footage went viral overnight. By morning, half the city was arguing, some calling her a saint, others a fool. But for the first time, Damian saw something money couldn't spin. Her act wasn't defiance, it was devotion. He watched the clip again, over and over, until dawn painted the windows gold. Then he called his driver. "Take me to East Haven," he said. When he arrived, Naomi was sweeping the same corner she always did. The same place her husband had died. The same place she'd built her second life. He stepped out of the car, raincoat billowing in the wind. The crowd stared, whispering. She looked up. "Come to fire me again?" He shook his head. "I came to listen." The silence that followed wasn't hostile. It was heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. "Tell me what you'd do," he said quietly. "If this city were yours to fix." She studied him, eyes soft but unyielding. "I wouldn't fix it. I'd heal it. You can build towers, Mr. Cross, but I can teach people to stand tall." He swallowed hard, the words scraping against everything he believed. For the first time in his life, Damian Cross didn't have an answer, only questions. And as he stood there, watching her sweep the rain from the street, he realized that the cleanest thing in the city wasn't his glass tower. It was her hands. The next morning, Naomi woke to the sound of knocking. Hard, official, relentless. She opened the door to two social workers in gray coats, clipboards ready, eyes already full of judgment. "Ms. Brooks," the older one said, "we've received multiple reports about your children's living conditions." Naomi's throat went dry. "My daughters are fine." "They're not your biological children," the woman said coldly. "They've been living without a legal residence for over a week. We have to intervene." Behind Naomi, the girls stirred. June peeked from the hallway, clutching her stuffed bear. Tess stepped in front of her like a shield. Naomi took a deep breath. "You're not taking them." "We're not here to argue," the social worker said, stepping forward. "We're here to protect. Protect them from what? From love? From a roof that leaks but never lies." The words broke out of her, trembling but fierce. But the papers were already in the woman's hands. Court orders, signatures, procedure. By noon, Naomi sat on the curb again, watching the van drive away with her 4 girls inside, their small faces pressed against the windows, eyes wide and wet. The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was punishment. She tried everything, called offices, pleaded with shelters, even went to Cross Holdings. But the guards didn't let her past the lobby. By evening, She stood under the same streetlight she'd worked beneath for years, rain soaking through her jacket, the broom heavy in her hands. She whispered to no one, "I can't do this anymore." Her knees gave out. For the first time since Marcus died, she didn't have the strength to stand. Across the city, Damian Cross sat in his car, parked outside the courthouse. He'd watched the same news clip 3 times, Naomi's children being taken away, her hands gripping the van door until her knuckles turned white. Something twisted in his chest. It wasn't guilt. It was recognition. He'd been that child once, taken from his mother, placed in foster care because poverty looked worse on paper than neglect ever did. He drove without thinking, through empty streets, past his own billboards, until he found her. Naomi sat by the curb, hair plastered to her face, the broom beside her like a sword dropped in defeat. He got out slowly, the rain swallowing his footsteps. "Naomi," he said softly. She didn't look up. "You win, Mr. Cross. The city's clean now." He knelt beside her. "No, it's not." She let out a broken laugh. "You took everything from me." "I didn't mean to," he said. "But you were right. I forgot who I was building for." He reached into his coat and handed her an envelope. "These are emergency guardianship papers. I used my foundation to intervene. You'll have your girls back tomorrow." She froze. "Why would you do that?" "Because someone once told me mercy isn't weakness," he said quietly. And I finally believe it. For a long moment, the only sound was rain. Then Naomi whispered, "If you really mean that, don't just save my children. Save theirs, the ones living under your projects, the ones no one sees." He met her eyes, tired, defiant, full of the same light that once changed him as a boy. He nodded. "Then let's build something worth sweeping for." She exhaled, trembling, the kind of breath that sounded like hope being reborn. The rain began to ease. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled away, leaving behind the quiet promise of morning. Naomi picked up her broom, straightened her back, and said softly, "Let's start where we left off." And for the first time in years, Damian Cross followed someone else's lead. Within a week, the headlines changed. "Billionaire partners with former janitor to rebuild East Haven." From street sweeper to city visionary, Naomi Brooks leads the renewal. The city that once mocked her name now whispered it with respect. Naomi didn't crave praise. She just wanted her girls back. And when she walked into the foster office with Damian beside her, she did. Lila, Tess, Grace, and June ran to her in a rush of tears and laughter. "Mama, you came back!" June shouted, arms flung around her waist. Naomi held them tight. "I never left," she said softly. Damian stood by the doorway, silent. Something in that reunion broke him open in a way money never could. He thought of his own mother, a woman who'd once scrubbed motel floors to feed him, and realized how much he'd buried to survive. That afternoon, Naomi brought the girls to the site of the old slum. Bulldozers waited at the edge of cracked pavement, but instead of demolition, a small crowd gathered with shovels, paint, and seedlings. "This isn't a project," Naomi told the workers. "It's a promise." The first thing they built wasn't a building. It was a garden, one patch of green in the middle of concrete, a symbol that healing didn't start with cement. Damian watched her direct the volunteers. Sleeves rolled up, hair tucked under a bandana, laughter lighting the air. She didn't command with power. She led with purpose. By nightfall, the garden was full of children playing between rows of flowers. Someone played music from an old radio, and Naomi's daughters danced barefoot on the soil. Damian smiled. "You've done more in a week than my company's done in years." Naomi looked at him, her tone even. "Because you were building walls, I'm planting doors." He laughed quietly, shaking his head. You always did talk like a teacher. She paused. You remember that? Every word, he said. You told me once that someday I'd build something great, if I remembered who I was building it for. She stared at him, stunned. I wrote that in your file. You still have it? He nodded. I kept it, even when I didn't deserve it. He hesitated, then looked toward the skyline. There's something you should know about your husband. Naomi froze. What about him? He worked for one of my subcontractors. I never knew his name until last week, Marcus Brooks. I went through the old records. Her breath caught. You were his employer. Yes, he said quietly, and I failed him. The safety equipment, it wasn't inspected. I thought cutting corners would save time. It cost lives. His was one of them. The world tilted. For a moment, Naomi couldn't speak. The man who had given her hope had also taken her everything. He stepped closer, voice low. You can hate me. You should. But if there's anything left in me worth saving, it's because of you. Her eyes filled. You think forgiveness is a transaction, Mr. Cross? You can't buy it with guilt. He nodded. I know. That's why I'm not asking for it. She turned away, wiping her face. Then why tell me? Because I don't want to build another tower on top of a grave, he said. Not his, not yours. Silence fell between them, heavy, human, holy. Finally, Naomi spoke. My husband believed people could change. Maybe he was right. But if you want to make this right, don't build for profit. Build for people. He met her gaze. Then help me. Stay. Naomi hesitated, looking toward her daughters laughing in the garden, their bare feet covered in dirt. The setting sun turned the skyline gold, the same color as Marcus's wedding ring still hanging on a string around her neck. She nodded once. I'll stay, but only if we start with the school. Damian smiled, almost boyish. You never stopped being a teacher, did you? Never had the chance, she said. The world just gave me a bigger classroom. Over the next months, the project transformed. What was meant to be a luxury complex became the Haven District, housing, clinics, and a community center. Damian funneled his resources into the foundation, and Naomi ran it like a mission. Every morning, she and her girls still swept the streets, not because they had to, but because it reminded them where they'd come from. On the anniversary of Marcus's death, Damian held a small ceremony. No cameras, no investors, just a plaque at the garden entrance that read, "Built from hands that refuse to give up." As Naomi placed her hand on the plaque, Damian whispered, "He'd be proud of you." She looked at him, and for the first time, without anger. Maybe he'd be proud of us, he nodded. Then let's make sure this never gets dirty again. The city lights flickered on behind them, and for once, they didn't look like fire. They looked like forgiveness. Morning came soft and gold over East Haven, the kind of light that felt earned. For the first time in decades, the air didn't smell like smoke or despair. The street that once broke Naomi's heart now bloomed with color. Murals lined the walls, flowers grew in the cracks, and laughter echoed off the bricks. The sign at the entrance read, "The Haven Community Center, built by hands that refuse to give up." Naomi stood beside her 4 daughters, all in clean uniforms, eyes wide with wonder. Around them gathered neighbors, volunteers, and reporters. The ribbon fluttered in the wind, bright red against the new sky. Damian Cross approached the microphone, but his usual polish was gone. His voice was steady, human. "This isn't my building," he said. "This belongs to the woman who reminded me that cities aren't made of stone. They're made of souls." The crowd turned to Naomi. She stepped forward, holding her broom like a scepter, smiling through tears. "This broom," she said softly, once swept alleys. Now it sweeps beginnings. The applause rolled like thunder. After the ceremony, the girls ran into the new playground, laughing, spinning, radiant. Damian and Naomi watched from a distance, their shadows long in the afternoon light. "You kept your promise," she said quietly. "So did you," he replied. "You taught me that dirt isn't what ruins a city. It's forgetting who it belongs to." She chuckled. "Still speaking like a student," he smiled. "Still learning from the same teacher." They stood there for a long moment, neither speaking. Around them, the city breathed again, a sound full of second chances. Later, Naomi locked up the center, walking slowly past the classrooms filled with new desks, the walls painted by children's hands. She touched one doorframe and whispered, "We did it, Marcus." Outside, Damian waited with the car. "Need a ride home?" She shook her head. "I'll walk. The ground feels better when you've earned it." He nodded, watching as she disappeared down the street. The broom balanced on her shoulder like a staff. The sun dipped low, turning the glass towers orange, reflections of something cleaner than profit, stronger than pain. In the distance, Naomi's daughters sang as they swept the last of the day's dust into a single pile. Grace, once silent, led the song. Her voice, gentle and clear, carried through the air. "We cleaned the streets. We found the light. We turned the dark to something bright. Our hands are small, but they still mend. The city broke and learned to bend." Naomi stopped to listen, her eyes glistening. She didn't cry. She smiled. The quiet, proud smile of a woman who had lost everything and still found her way back. That night, as the city lights flickered to life, Damian stood on the rooftop of his old tower, the one Marcus had died building. He looked toward East Haven, where music drifted faintly through the wind. He whispered to himself, "You built the tower, Marcus. She built the ground it stands on." He closed his eyes. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel above the city. He felt part of it. Some hands build empires. Some hands sweep what's left behind. But the rarest hands, they build grace. Because wealth fades, towers fall. But kindness doesn't rust. A broom in the right hands can be a sword, and a mother with nothing can still teach a city how to stand tall. Naomi Brooks didn't clean for a living. She cleaned so others could live. And sometimes, that's how heaven smells, like rain on concrete, and hope that refuses to stay quiet.